Hello everyone, welcome. Thank you for waiting. For those who got them, please, wallet, watch, cell phone, teeth, spouse, children, don't let that happen. And for those folks around you, if you can hang on to conversation till the very end, it helps everybody be able to hear. Also helps me out, especially the folks around me. Any school teachers here? No? A couple? Or you know how that is? You hear chatter and sometimes it gets distracting. I already hear voices, so if you add to it, it's too many. I'm kidding, just a joke. On our left, these folks are standing in front of believed to be the oldest tree on the property, around 500 to 600 years old. The long branch tree just beyond it, one with the long thing coming out, they nicknamed that the wedding tree. The wedding tree is called that because people take their picture in front of it before or after their wedding, but they also do some proposals. That's a special spot if you're looking to propose. Someone did it last week. She said no, but it was still a beautiful occasion. Just kidding. Off to our left is our tidal creek. That moves with the tides of the ocean. The tide comes in, the tide goes out. Right now we're approaching high tide. We're almost at high tide. Who's a fan of the movie The Notebook? Anyone here?
Yeah.
They did film a scene right there where the main character jumps off the boat in the water. That's right where it happened. The tent to the right, we just had an event this morning. It's called Easter. Different groups come in throughout the year. That's an annual thing. They have an Easter service that happens here. There's a lot of cars coming out when I was coming in. Anybody here for that Easter service? No? Okay. Nonetheless, happy Easter, but that was part of that. Now, last month we had the Low Country Oyster Festival. And that brought about 9,000 plus people in here. Prior to that, back in December, we had Wine Under the Oaks. People sat under oak trees to whine and complain and tell each other their problems. No. They drank wine under the oaks. Maybe they did both, right? The freshwater pond over here to the right. If you don't mind staying seated, but Ryan at one point will stop. When he stops, it's safe to stand up. Just give him a moment. And you can take a picture when you're standing. Just don't do any dives. There are alligators in the water. Don't drop your cell phones. It becomes alligator food at that point. A couple platforms out there have yellow-bellied turtles sitting on them. There are birds here, one of those being a snowy egret and the great heron in the tree in front of us. An anhinga just flew off to the right, dove in the water. It's got its head poking out. It's kind of doing a little swim. If you see that beyond the right platform. All right, if you want to stand up, you're welcome to it. You don't have to, but if you want to, you can take a picture. Off in the distance, there is a boardwalk. That boardwalk's accessible from the parking lot. So if you want to get to it, top right-hand corner of the parking lot is where you want to get that entrance. Now, there's a bird here that exists. I don't see it now, but it's called a roseate spoonbill. It's a pink bird, and it gets its color from what it eats, krill, like a flamingo would. It's got a beak shaped like a spoon. I don't see it now, but usually it's hanging out by itself. It seems to be a loner, but typically I see them in groups in South Carolina hanging together, a whole group of spoonbills. I had to look up what a group of spoonbills is called. Anyone know? It's called a bowl. A bowl of spoonbills. It sounds like a joke I made up, doesn't it? No, it's real. It sounds like a breakfast cereal too, doesn't it? Ryan, do you see any alligators? Oh yeah, okay. So if you look off to the right, there's a couple palm trees. There's a white bird in the tree. It's a snowy egret, I believe. And then down below it, in the middle of those two palm trees, there's actually a bird behind it, just flopped its wing. But there's a little alligator right underneath. Now, if you get back to being seated, Ryan will move forward. And once you're set, right in the back, if y'all could get back to being seated, we'll get moving. We just, when it goes into gear, sometimes it gets a little, herky-jerky. We don't really falling or bumping their head or who knows what. Safety first. Now, I'm not going to get too far ahead of myself because we do have a lot to talk about. But there's a farm here. Cover crops up ahead to the left, but we'll move on and see more of the pond. So I don't want to miss anything. So keep your eyes peeled to the right. You can just see if we see any other birds. I saw a great blue heron not too long ago. It was about 2.5 to 3 feet tall. It was very large. And it hangs out here in this top right corner. I haven't seen it in a couple days, but occasionally I'll see an ibis as well. I think there's an ibis out there. The little white bird has a curved beak, pokes in the water. And then occasionally also I'll see an alligator on this side as well. Our state flag is blue because of indigo. It's a plant they put through a process to create a blue dye. It was very popular in England. Although that customer was lost during the Revolutionary War, they said we're not going to buy the indigo anymore. Now those that were enslaved handling the indigo, there's another part of that reality, is had shorter lifespans because it was very toxic in the fermentation process. You would take the plant, squash it with ammonia. Well, ammonia was not obviously readily available back in the time, right? There were no Home Depots nearby. What would they use instead? Anybody know? Animal urine. I heard that, yes. Animal urine was what they collected from the barns. And those that were enslaved a lot of times had blue hands, blue feet, permanently stained, and that would get into the bloodstream. And unfortunately, that was a reality, is shorter lifespans due to the toxicity of creating indigo. Now, when England stopped buying commercially because of the Revolutionary War, at Boone Hall, they turned to cotton specifically, focused on that. And this was a little cotton patch here. Now you see a couple cotton balls that have been tilled into the ground there. This is for demonstration purposes also, but there used to be cotton fields as far as the eye can see up until the late 1800s, after the end of slavery. It's still producing crops and things here on the farm. Cotton was the main source until it crashed in value. It dropped. It went from 63 cents a pound all the way down to 3 cents a pound. At that point, making it no longer profitable. So what did they start planting instead? Someone said polyester? No. No, they started planting pecan trees. And out there are some of the old growth pecan. We've actually planted some new ones as well. If you came out of that little neighborhood, there were some short little trees. That's kind of part of the natural history. We've kind of regrown. But there were over 15,000 estimated pecan trees here on the property, making it the world's largest producer and exporter of pecans until a couple storms came through. First storm happened in 1911. That was called the Storm of 1911. Now, they didn't have names for hurricanes at the time, right? That was a hurricane. Wiped out about 30% of the trees. Now, they revitalized that pecan grove and produced more pecans through the 20th century up until 1989. And then another storm hit. This one had a name. It was called Hurricane Hugo, yes. Category 4 hurricane, direct hit, caused about $6 billion in damage. Wiped out the rest of the trees, leaving between 50 and 100 left on property. Pretty much all that's left. Gotta have those blueberries to make a blueberry beer we actually had on tap at a cafe this last summer. Now, if you want to get something on tap, go to the cafe, Butterfly Cafe, and you might get something on tap. There are 3 of those little turkeys running. Here on the left, those turkeys actually keep the bugs down here. Those 4 of them. These are muscadine grapes on the left. You folks ever hear of Boone's Farm Wine? Yeah, has nothing to do with Boone Hall. In fact, the wine from this vineyard is worse than Boone's Farm Wine, if you could only imagine that. Now, they use this for jams and jellies. In reality, planted by those that were enslaved at the time. And these trees are the southern live oak, the variety. There's a lot of different varieties of oak. This is one of them. This does exist all throughout the South. The trees grow wider than taller. As you see that wide branch coming over the road, the root system is as large as the tree. It's all interconnected at this point underground, making it one big living unit. Hanging from the trees is something called Spanish moss. That is not Spanish, and it's not moss. That's an air plant called an epiphyte. It feeds off the nutrients in the air, and the sunshine just kind of hangs on the tree as its residence. It's not a parasite. It doesn't harm the tree. It doesn't choke out the tree. Why it's called Spanish moss? Well, it's believed that the Native American tribes in the area called it tree beard. Well, Spanish conquistadors came through. They had beards that looked just like what was on the trees. They started calling it Spanish beard. And then somehow over time, it just morphed into Spanish moss. Now, that's kind of the believed history of why it's called that. It's just a nickname. The tree, the Spanish moss itself is all part of the natural fauna here. Grows throughout the South. loves the wide tree branches of the live oak. It's, believe it or not, related to the pineapple, which I found very odd because it doesn't look or taste anything like pineapple. It's more like a shredded wheat sort of a... Now, they say it's safe to pull from the tree, but if it falls in the ground, it can attract ground bugs. You don't want to pick up, there's lots of bugs in South Carolina. Don't pick it up, take it home with you. You might be taking a ground bug with you. The tree branch on the right's being supported because it cracked at the trunk. Kind of a funky way to do it, but it works. It's fusing it back into that tree, keeping the branch alive and the tree healthy. Now, if they don't crack, they make their way down to the ground, even growing in the ground again. The opening on the right with the cross is Thomas Boone's grave. That is the only known marked grave on site. Now, what I mean by that is, of course, those that were enslaved, worked, died, lived, worked, and died on this property. In reality, there are unmarked graves throughout. These were original homes that they lived in the history of Boone Hall. Each cabin having now its own kind of little presentation inside of African-American history. One of them has artifacts in it. One has floorboards pulled up. Do take time out for this, as I do consider this to be sacred ground, just in honor of those that were enslaved. I always like to give a moment of silence just as we pass by here on the left. Halle Berry's Queen, a little bit of scenes in the movie The Notebook. Episode of American Idol was filmed here, as well as a TV show called North and South. Back in the mid-'80s, Patrick Swayze ran a horse down that road with his own beautiful mane blowing in the wind. The stable tours happen at the top of every hour. You meet on the left side of the stable. If you're into horse racing, there's some very interesting horse racing history from that stable tour. This building right here on the right, you can see the before picture right at that little entry. They restored that recently from people getting scared half to death from our fall festival. Did a fantastic job. Speaking of doing a fantastic job, thank you so much, folks, for your attention. Y'all did a fantastic job. I appreciate that. Really helped me out and help folks around you be able to hear. I appreciate that. If you have any questions on your way out, let me know. If you don't mind hanging on to your seats till I get the gate open and the stairs down, I'd appreciate that as well. Thank you so much, folks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And then, you know, a lot of the collard greens and mac and cheese, macaroni and cheese sides, and other kind of local greens. It's interesting to see what the low country food is here, different. Grits, if you guys are into grits at all,
Yes.
any grits? Grits? Not my particular favorite, but anyway, so I'll get going. My name's Mark. If you do have any questions, and it doesn't even have to be about slave history, which is what I'm talking about, but I've been here 9 years, so if you had any general questions, just things you're wondering about, I'll be happy to answer those as well. But I just talk a minute or so about these cabins. These are unusual slave houses that you guys are sitting in between right now. These would not be your typically constructed slave houses. Do you know why these are different? Made out of brick, yeah. Very unusual to see brick slave houses. Most slave houses made out of wood. Wood planking, wood roofs. Most of the wood ones barely half the size of these. I mean, if you look at cabin 1 here, you go to the back wall here, the wooden cabin's maybe just beyond the doorway. So very, very small, the wooden one. And Boone Hall had a combination of brick ones and wooden ones. And I'll talk about the wooden ones in just a few minutes here. These also have interesting roofs on them. That's called English pan tile. That's a clay-based roof, so that's very unusual. These each have a fireplace you can see for it. So this is very large housing. These were built starting in the late 1790s, completed in the early 1800s. The slaves back then were allowed to use scrap or defective bricks from the brick operation, which had been started out here in the late 1700s. helping to stomp on the clay, the sand, and the water to make bricks, wherever they could help. When they were 12 years old, when slave children were 12, they were considered full hands. Before that, they were half hands, but at age 12, they were full hands, which means they were expected to do a full adult's work, you know, during the day. But yeah, just a lot of
There's a little patch of garden. Mm-hmm. With charts.
Their life and family.
Inside these walls where you're now standing lived a family and sometimes a couple of families of slaves. Like many slave cabins across the South, the slave quarters were the center of their family life. When the slaves were not working, this is where they would be. These specific cabins here at Boone Hall date back to the late 1700s to early 1800s.